welcome to the afternoon session. Hopefully you're not yet asleep. Upgrade. I assume you all have already implemented your old 2012 system. And now your goal is to how we can protect that investment, how we can preserve that investment we made into 2012, both code and the data, and how we can move into Dynamics 365 for operations. Last year, that was not possible. We didn't have full story. We had only code upgrade. This year, as you learned in the previous session, we have both code upgrade and the data upgrade from AX 2012. If you are here to learn about code upgrade from AX 2009, sorry to disappoint you, we don't have code upgrade from 2009 available. Code upgrade only from 2012. Data upgrade also only from 2012. Previous session was an overview session. This session we're gonna go a little bit deeper, and we're gonna talk in details, and we're gonna demo you both the code upgrade, as well as we're gonna talk and show you how to approach your data upgrade, how to write data upgrade scripts, and what are the most common patterns you might experience during your implementation. Could you please raise your hands who is currently planning an upgrade from AX 2012? A lot of people. Who is planning only data? Who is planning only the code upgrade? Who do not want to move data? Most of the people want to move both the code and the data. Excellent. So right now we do have a very good story here that allow you to do both. So let's talk about how in general we're gonna approach this from Microsoft perspective. So difference here from upgrade to previous versions, from 2009 to 2012, that right now we as Microsoft, we have a very prescriptive approach. We really would like you to succeed with your upgrade, so we took time to provide you with methodology, how to approach your code and data upgrade, and also provide you with some tools that will help you with analysis of that upgrade, and actually will take most of the tasks related to the code upgrade and automate it, and pretty much provide you with a magic button that you click, and most of the tasks are going to be done automatically. So let's start with the code upgrade in general. Who ever tried to do a code upgrade? Who already performed some task of code upgrade? Excellent, quite a few people. So we won't spend much time on the code upgrade. We'll still do a quick demo to ensure that everybody in the audience know how to approach it and listen to the new things we've implemented since. But most of our today's session later going to be focused on the new part that we developed pretty recently, which is a data upgrade. But first thing first, before we go to data, let's upgrade our code. Let me remind you of our general end-to-end approach for the code upgrade. First of all, there is no kind of on-premise code upgrade. Everything's happening in the cloud. Everything's happening in LCS to ensure that whatever new rules we have implemented for the code upgrade, we can iterate very fast, as well as help you to upgrade your code as a service. You have your LCS project. You do initial setup of your LCS project. Set up your environments, and set up your Visual Studio team services. Then you take your model store file, you zip it, and you upload to this LCS project code upgrade tool. After we run this tool, we're gonna auto-upgrade most of the objects from 2009 to Dynamics 365 for operations. And also we're gonna check in all the upgraded objects into Visual Studio team services. If you're not ready to check in your code into version control, we have another option for you. You can run just the estimate, checkbox estimate, and we're not gonna check in any code yet, but we're gonna provide you with an Excel spreadsheet that will provide you an overview of what's left, what's the complexity of the upgrade going to be when you are ready to perform it. This is very useful for later when you would like to discuss, for example, if you're a partner and you'd like to approach that upgrade project with a customer. It's a very nice first estimate of the scope of work that still you have to do after automated upgrade is done. As soon as you're ready, as soon as all the newly upgraded code checked in into Visual Studio Team Services, that's the fun part starts. That's your manual code upgrade. Even though we say that it's a magic tool, that we upgrade most of the objects, but many of you who already tried code upgrade, you know that there are still a lot of tasks left there. You have to resolve conflicts. You have to resolve all the compile errors. You have to move all the things that were overlaying of our objects. You have to move them to extensions. And for some projects, it can be quite a bit of refactoring there. Do the stuff with the forms, ensure that the forms were properly migrated from the previous rich client to the new vision of HTML5 web-based client. So a lot of manual tasks still there remains. And we'll try to help you with estimation of those manual tasks during today's session. So what we do convert? We pretty much from 2012 to X7, we convert pretty much everything. And here, when it comes to the code upgrade, you can use both R2, you can use R3. There is no requirement for you for the code upgrade to be on R3. You can use pretty much any 2012 model store as a source for your upgrade. Of course, there are some components that were depreciated and some things that we just cannot migrate into Dynamics 365 for operations. For instance, Enterprise Portal, it's gone forever. Who is happy about Enterprise Portal being gone? Yay! So now we replace it with newer and better things. Obviously, if you had any rich customer controls within your rich client, now obviously you cannot use the same things within the new 365 operations. So you will have to completely rewrite it or work with your users to re-architect your system, reimagine your system with a new client in mind. Document services were gone, so a lot of changes to the integration in general. Obviously, before your database, for instance, were open and you had a lot of customers who were running integrations with other systems directly by querying the database. Obviously, such integrations will not be possible anymore because of all production system being locked down. And in general, that is not a good idea to run query-based integrations. So that's something you will have to change. You'll have to change any code related to document services and integration in general retested with the new Azure concepts in mind. Form parts also being replaced. Queues and previous Visual Studio projects that were in your previous project, they also won't be migrated into the new system. So that's what we cannot do for you. After our automated upgrade is done, most of the objects were moved into the new system. What's left? What you have to do with those objects? You will deploy a development environment. You will connect it to this Visual Studio Team Services that has newly upgraded code, and you start going through the pretty much checklist of your manual data upgrade. You start with unparsable files. Some of the objects so complex in the 2012 that we cannot convert them reliably. So something that you have to do manually and resolve those unparsable files first. Resolve conflicts and compile errors, of course. Refactor old code as extensions. That's not an easy task, obviously. Implement form patterns. For every form, we really want those forms to adhere to our predefined form patterns, which we have tested on all supported browsers, on all supported resolutions. If your form does not comply with one of our form patterns, then we're going to flag it as non-compliant. And also we say to you, sorry, guys, we're not sure whether or not your form going to work well on all resolutions. So that's something you may want to change your forms to ensure that each of them has 100% compliance with the form patterns we suggest. Obviously, modern reports and BI, you would like to uptake as much BI, as much as Power BI as you can. It's a very cool tool, and obviously many customers love it. So it's something that you may want to rethink your existing reports to the new technology. Rebuild your integration story, maybe in some cases from scratch, not an easy task. And new thing, if you are moving data, that's the time when you want to think about your data upgrade scripts. Later during the session, we're going to show you all the patterns when you do and when you do not need an upgrade script. And during your code upgrade, that's the time when you would like to start thinking about the data upgrade. If you're doing any data schema breaking change between 2012 and Dynamics 365 for operations during your code upgrade, and you know that that change is major enough, that's the time for you to note it somewhere and then start writing a data upgrade script to ensure that your data will be moved properly from 2012 to Dynamics 365 for operations. Could you please raise your hands, whoever did data upgrades in the previous versions? Quite a few people. Excellent. So I have excellent news for you. So whatever concepts you already, pretty much we're using very similar framework for the data upgrades. There are some, of course, changes, which Paul going to talk about in a bit. But major concepts of data upgrade scripts, of pre-synchronized, post-synchronized upgrade scripts, if those things don't scare you at the moment because you already got used to them in the previous version, good news for you, they're the same concepts that we are using in the current upgrade framework as well. So a lot of knowledge that you already have, it's still there and you can reuse it, of course, with the new version as well. But that's something to note for you, that part of your manual code upgrade, that's the time to start thinking of your data upgrade scripts and data upgrade in general. So let's do a very, very quick demo of the code upgrade for people who never seen code upgrade before. So first of all, I want to show you how to start, how to approach the code upgrade in general. As I mentioned, that all starts from your LCS project, where we have a lot of tools here, including code upgrade tool. Before you use this tool, before you start, you might want to go to the project settings and link your Visual Studio Team Services project, link it to your LCS project. So code upgrade tool will know where to check in the code generated as part of the upgrade process. So when it's done, then you can actually run the code upgrade. And to do it, as I said, it's a magic button. Everything is very simple. Go to the code upgrade. See, I already tried quite a few times. You click Add. Then you pick which version you're upgrading, whether you're upgrading from 2012 or you're running code upgrade against previous previous build of Dynamics 365 for operations, to do an upgrade between builds. So in our case, we're going to do from X 2012. We're going to define the project here. Whether if you'd like to do an estimate only without checking in the code, you check that check mark, estimation only. Otherwise, you proceed with the create of project. Then you add files, and here you are going to upload a zipped model store from X 2012 that you exported from X 2012 system. That's it. It's going to take some time to upload, so I'm not going to do it as a part of the demo. Also, everybody is very well familiar with the process. But as soon as you've done it, you click on Analyze Code button, wait for a few hours, and here you go. You have your upgraded code checked into your source control system. So that's pretty much very straightforward. So that's step number one. Step number two, after that's done, you are going to provision one of your development boxes. That's the box you're going to use to actually do the manual part of the code upgrade. It's a very typical box, just you're going to point it to the Visual Studio Team Services account and map it correctly to ensure that you can get the code and do the actual manual part of the data migration. To this, you connect to your Visual Studio Team Services account and then click on the Configure Workspaces. And I personally prefer to go to Advanced. This one, I don't like it how it's done by default, so you may want to map two folders here. Usually, probably it's going to be in your chunk folder, main, metadata. That's one folder you're going to point to your drive packages local directory. That's going to be your metadata. And then also projects from also trunk main projects. That's going to go into your Visual Studio projects account. Oh, sorry. That's it. After you've done that mapping, you click OK. And yes, now you're gonna get all that upgraded code into your local development box and go through the manual upgrade steps necessary to upgrade the code, compile, ensure that everything works fine, and then check in the code back into Visual Studio Team Services. Of course, it's not only one developer who might want to work on this one. It's multiple teams. It's usually not a simple task, but the process is very well defined. Our tool works pretty well, so it's going to provide you with a very nice tool set to complete your code upgrade. As part of your code upgrade, I mentioned that estimate option. So when your upgrade is completed, one of the outputs of that upgrade, along with upgraded code, going to be an Excel spreadsheet. Let me show it to you. We changed it. We recently changed it. So that's Excel spreadsheet you can bring to your customer or your CFO when asking for money for the upgrade project, and show him or her how much tasks left. What are the errors? What is the overview? How many overlayered objects in the upgraded code that you know that you'll have to move to extensions, etc. So this Excel spreadsheet is a very useful tool to understand what actually code upgrade tool did with your code and where is your code right now. So it's a basis for your estimation. So that's how code upgrade works. Now, after all the manual code upgrade done, anything left? Are we ready to go live with the new code? Not yet. First of all, we do need to consider the ISV story. So if you are a customer, you might be using quite a few ISVs within your 2012 solution. First of all, of course, you may want to look into the ISV and see if they're still necessary for your operations story. And if they do, if those ISVs that you are currently using have an Dynamics 365 for operations version of their solution. You don't want to upgrade code for the ISVs. You do want to get the latest code base, upgraded code base from ISVs, and insert it within and replace upgraded code with the solution provided by your ISVs. That's going to be the first step that you're going to do even before you start your manual code upgrade. Beyond ISV story, quite a few other things that you might want to consider before you mark that upgrade project as success. First of all, look into the workspaces. It's a new concept in Dynamics 365. You may want to uptake all those cool features and cool workspaces to ensure that your users really can benefit from all the new things. Definitely look into the form patterns, and 100% of the form patterns compliance to our recommended form patterns. Data entities. If you do a lot of integration story, it's going to force you anyway to create those data entities. We have a lot of automated tools that can provide you with the data entities. The wizard that can give you a head start on the data entities itself, but still you would like to ensure that you have full coverage of the data entities you're going to be using during your daily projects. Look into the rich controls and see if you're missing any rich controls and create those. Rich BI scenarios, Power BI integration, and see how you can replace your old reports with a new Power BI story. Fix all the best practice errors, obviously, and to-dos within your existing code, and start updating new things in Dynamics 365, like, for example, task guides and automated testing, something you may want to record within your code and provide it to your users to teach them how to use your new code base, or for automated testing, how to do regression testing automatically. Task guides are priceless. Look into your mobile story. and see if some of the cool things that you learned during this conference about our mobile solutions are applicable, and extend your solutions to be working on the mobile devices as well. And for ISVs, obviously you may want to ensure that your solution is curated, available, and later certified on our app source. We have some requirements, of course, for the solution. So it has to have zero best practice errors, etc., etc. So you may want to work with us in order to upload it to the app source, certify it, and curate to ensure that your customers are using it all around the world. So that's end-to-end story. As you see, it's not only about the code upgrade. We really would like to use code upgrade for you as an opportunity to rethink your solution from scratch and ensure that it's ready for the new Dynamics 365 for operations world. So that's when it comes to the code upgrade. Now, let's talk about the data. How we can move the data from 2012 system to the new system, and what are the typical patterns we see during such upgrades.
What's your question?
Yeah, sorry, the question? Yeah, so in the previous versions, for the code upgrade, you were doing code upgrade layer by layer, right? Right now, you take the whole model store, so it's all layers. You're going to upgrade them into the new Dynamics 365 for operations, and we're going to take care of those conflicts in the most cases for you. However, note that sometimes those layers, why we have the code in multiple layers, because we have ISVs in the lower layers. So for those, you may want to import, after you did the upgrade, you may want to import the new model from your ISV first before you continue resolution of your conflicts, to ensure that your base model from ISVs is there. As you know, in Dynamics 365 operations, layers are less important than they were in X 2012. In a sense, we are moving from layers concept, we are moving more towards model concept there. So some of the problems that you used to have in 2012 code upgrade with multiple layers and resolving conflicts, in Dynamics 365 for operations, those are less prominent there. Other questions about the code upgrade? Yes? Mm-hmm.
With the upgraded code, if you have like var, cus, and user, God forbid, but it's not uncommon to see customization, so all those three layers.
Mm-hmm.
What models do they end up in?
Mm-hmm.
Do they end up in their own models, or is it all mashed into one big?
Mm-hmm. They will end up in their own models. Here's the important thing also, which packages they're going to end up with. So for each object, pretty much, it will end up in a package that is related to the base, let's say, if you are, if in 2012 you did customizations, let's say, on a sys object, which we definitely not recommend. Please don't do any customizations on sys, especially global classes. Even though you may want even to clean up your code even before you're doing the upgrade, as one of the ideas. But in that case, it's going to end up, those customizations going to end up in their own models in the package that was derived from the base object that was customized, overlaid to begin with. But their own models. They're not going to be meshed up altogether. No.
So, technically speaking, then, all your customizations should ideally be in the same package as the application suite in a different mod. Is that correct?
At the end of the upgrade, so after you run all the automated tools, you might end up some of the things there. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, yes. So the question is, so at the end, so after the upgrade, so is it a good idea that all the objects gonna end up in the application suite in their own models? So is it right?
So I guess what I'm asking is, let's say I have customizations only as far as the functionality is concerned, and I have those customizations in var, cus, and user, all three layers. Okay, so I've uploaded my model store. So what is spit out? Is it like 3 different models in the application suite package, or some other type of construct?
So excellent question. So let's say you have customizations in 3 layers, CAS, VAR, and ISV. So the question is, after the automated upgrade tool, what the output, which models, which packages that's gonna end up with? Is it gonna be an application suite or something else? So the answer is the following. So depends on which particular object that customization was originally. If you were customizing global class, those customizations will end up in our foundation or the platform class. If the original object was tax, then probably it's going to end up in application suite. So we're going to, but in its own model within that package. So at the end, your customizations within your layer is not going to be just one model. It's going to be multiple models within multiple packages. Multiple models within multiple packages. As part of your upgrade, code upgrade, your goal after you've done with manual upgrade, you may want to move all those overlayering that happen in your application, platform application foundation, all these locked packages. You might want to move them as an extensions as part of the manual upgrade. But as a beginning step, it's still going to end up within those original models, and it's going to show on those Excel spreadsheet as an overlayering that you might want to look at during your manual code upgrade process. And yeah, it's not an easy task. Don't plan a lot of time to move that to the extensions.
So is this like a suggestion that once we are done with the code upgrade, I need to move all my models with my own package and refer to the packages that was initially modeled?
Yes. So to repeat,
Suggestion or just go with what we have?
yes. So to repeat the question, so is it a suggestion after we've done kind of as part of the manual upgrade to move everything into your own model, into your own package, or still possible to keep the objects within the original packages where they were created as part of the automated upgrade? So our answer here, absolutely move them out of our packages. You might want either as a refactoring, as an extensions. An extension's gonna be living within your package. But if you have any overlaying on our, let's say, foundation platform or the other objects, please avoid this. And because first of all, as you've heard today, we're locking down a lot of things, a lot of packages. We already have a platform and foundation locked down, so you won't be able even to compile without errors if you keep those objects as part of our packages. Refactor them, move them extensions, move them out, and create your own packages to ensure that later upgrade story from between builds not going to be looking like a heart surgery. Every time you do an upgrade, it's going to be closer to a haircut. That's our ideal goal. Yes, sorry.
So after a couple of versions with your lock app suite, how will this process work?
Hopefully it's going to work better and better, because more things will lock, less things you can overlay there, which means less conflict with our code you will have. So no conflicts means the upgrade technically, hopefully going to be eventually looking like upgrade of Outlook or Microsoft Office. Next, 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 and that's it. It's done. Ideally.
How will when you develop upgrade be able to create objects on App Suite as a part of that process?
Well, it's still, you still can create. So as part of, sorry, the question is how upgrade from 2012 gonna be able to create those objects within the App Suite or the other objects. At the moment, you still can create those objects. So it's gonna create there. The problem is lockdown doesn't mean that you cannot create objects there by using our upgrade tool. It's not like read-only. It means when you compile, there's gonna be error message. So though temporarily, technically, they are kind of there in limbo, but eventually your goal as a manual upgrade, you'll move them out and you'll get rid of those permanently. My course upgrade tool is going to be changing eventually soon, so we'll have some changes. Comment, Rick, would you like to comment? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got some work to do there,
Yeah.
basically, on our side to be able to lock the application as well. So that the code upgrade tool can convert way more things to extensions than it can today, right? You kind of notice some of the problems that we have. Today, if we launched the app, then the code upgrade tool would be largely unusable. We would have to delete it and convert it to extensions. So we've got a bunch of work to do to improve what the code upgrade tool can do for that new world of the locked app.
Absolutely. So we are working on definitely some of the things that currently are overlaying. Technically, they could be extensions. We're already moving some stuff to extensions, as you might have seen, including menus and the other things. So we can definitely do much more, and we're going to do it. Yes?
From which version of Dynamics 2012 I can use the upgrade?
Excellent question. So from which version you can use code upgrade for between 2012 and Dynamics 365 for operations? At the moment, you can use from any 2012 version code upgrade. Any version you can use, and the tool gonna accept any code base from 2012. For data upgrade, it's a bit different story, but we're gonna talk about it in a second. 2009, no go. Yes. One more question.
The RTM version doesn't add the model store against.
Sorry?
The first version of Dynamics 2012 doesn't add the model store.
Yes. So the question is for 2012 RTM that doesn't have the model store. If you still have the model store, you can use axutil to export the model store for RTM version. It doesn't have a separate database for the model store. But we are not exporting database directly anyway. We are exporting using xutil, and that's going to provide you with a .model store file, then that you zip and upload into the cloud. Excellent. Sounds good, guys. So it's in the back.
In the back.
So if I have SSRS report, like standard is, added new design, customized it, upgrade tool is going to handle that? Or
So the question is about... Yeah. Excellent question. So a question about SSRS reports in 2012. Are we upgrading them well into Dynamics 365 for operation? Not really. Dynamics 365 kind of... First of all, you may want really to rethink most of your reports. Ideally, actually, we have a customer who moved 99% of their reports to Power BI, and they're super happy about it. So first thing, you may want to even completely move some of the, not all of course, there are some reports like checks and other stuff, you cannot, but move them there, move them to MR. But in general, reports, we are not upgrading them too well. You may want, that's something that part of the manual task you may want to add to your checklist to ensure that you uptake new modern reports.
But you do anticipate the kind of blowback that we receive from clients when we tell them that, because you just had us migrate all the way from 2009 to SSRS in 2012. Now we have a whole new platform to migrate to. So,
So the question is about the blowback from the customers. Whether they're going to be happy or not about that, we are suggesting them one more tool, Power BI, to upgrade to if they recently moved to SSRS. Well, first of all, you still can use SSRS. It's still not going anywhere in Dynamics 365 for operations. There are still many reports that can run only using SSRS, and it's still a valid tool to continue using. We're investing into it. We have a session on the modern BI, I believe, on the modern reports that can pretty much, they look very cool and very nice. But if your customer is ready for moving some of their reports to the Power BI, that's something they may want to consider as an extra and see if they want to.
But technically, if we just transplant this SSRS reports from 2012 to Dynamics 365 for Ops, do they still work without too much effort?
No, you still have to look at them. Some of them are not fully. There are some things that change there in the backend. So you have to put it as one of the tasks on your checklist, manual upgrade, to ensure that they are all working. We do not guarantee that they're going to work all out of the box. Definitely not. No, if anything is in the works.
The same overlaying challenge.
Yep.
I'm not sure everyone- It's
Yeah.
the same overlaying challenge that you had if you were taking a
Yeah.
newer version of 2012. The overlaying problem with SSRS reports, or the merging challenge, I should say, when you've overlaid an exactly the same in
Yeah.
365 as it was in 2012 itself?
Even worse because, well, the same, but it's not because as reports are not exactly the code. Your data providers classes, yeah, they're going to be fine. But your reports, in fact, they're blobs. They're not XML file. You cannot easily look inside the reports and see if you moved the fields around. Those things we cannot upgrade easily. Those designs of the reports, you have to manually look into them and see if they're still valid and maybe uptake modern reports.
So for the customers who are considering the on-prem version where they might not have Power BI, for them, all SSRS report they need to rewrite
They have to look at them and see if they still work end to end. Yes, even if they don't use the Power BI, reporting upgrades, upgrade tool are not working very well with the designs itself. So they have to look at them. Yep. Right, guys? Sounds good. So now let's spend most of our time on the data upgrade because it's a newer topic than the code upgrade. So a lot of cool stuff is happening.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, just give me a sec to hook up my laptop here. All right. So data upgrade. Again, my name is Paul Wu. If you don't know me, I'm solution architect on the R&D team. So second session of the day. Very excited. The overall process of data upgrade, like Tariq has introduced you guys to, is at a very high level 3 different steps, right? Analysis, execute, and validate. Very simple. So my talk is going to go along exactly the same set of steps, except for execution piece, which is the part that we focused on. I'm going to dive a little deeper into some of the developer aspects of things. So I'm not going to repeat whatever previously Tariq has already talked about. Upgrade analysis, here what we do is clean up the data, all that good stuff. Before we get into execute, though, I want to step back and ask you guys: how many of you guys have already attempted a 2012 data upgrade or migration? Okay, a few of you. Have you done an actual upgrade? Means moving everything inside of 2012 DB over, or it's more of a migration? So master data, configuration, open documents, open balances. Yes. Okay. When you talk to customers, what's the biggest push for the customer to say, hey, we want to do a data upgrade versus a migration? Historical data, yeah. Any other reasons? It's mostly for historical data, for auditing, reporting purposes and all that, right? Okay. The customer wants the supported way. Yes. And for those of you who are doing a migration approach, what's your approach? What's the approach that you guys are using? Through data entity? Yeah? Okay, good. Have you guys been to the 2009 data migration session? Yes. Okay, good. That approach is a migration approach, right? And this approach is an entirely different approach, right? This has nothing to do with data entities. Probably the only session during this entire conference that's nothing to do with data entities. But this is, if you have done a intra 2012 data upgrade, right? It's in place upgrade. You just kind of morph the database, in place into something a newer kernel can run on top, right? Over here, we're doing exactly the same thing, right? Before we dive into what happens on the 7 side, on the 365 side, I will talk a little bit about what exactly do you have to do to prep your 2012 DB, right? Tariq briefly mentioned that we have a hotfix that we're shipping. Essentially, this hotfix introduced a single kind of checklist, pre-upgrade checklist type of form. And then you can just mark these tasks as complete as you prep your 2012 production environment. And obviously, these steps are idempotent. You can run them as many times as possible. It has no impact on your production DB whatsoever, so you can safely deploy the hotfix to production and run them. What it does is, I remember in previous session somebody was asking about element ID. What do we do with like object ID and such stuff? So in order for us to keep your element ID, we're doing a sync engine. A sync engine actually has, if you played with sync engine before, it actually has this option called a full ID sync, which means if there is a model element table inside of my business DB, I know it's not supposed to be there, but if there is one, the sync engine is going to grab whatever ID is in there and then sync it with the existing metadata on 7, right? So that's first and foremost we want, simply because your model element table is actually in the model DB, it's not in your business DB. And for your data upgrade, we only want your business DB, right? Plus a couple of tables over here. That's why when you give us your production DB, we'd say, you know what, help us copy a few data from your model DB so we can do our upgrade properly. So that's exactly what this does. So we'll copy model elements from the model DB and put it on the table. In a business DB, we'll copy some security role information from the model DB, put it on the business DB. Tariq already talked about the user to UPN mapping. Over here, we have basically a grid automatically pulsing all the existing X 2012 users. You can either manually type in their login name, UPN name, or you can ask your AD admin to do a bulk user export and then import it as a file. Okay, so that's pretty much what you do on 2012 side. Besides, the cleanup and all the good stuff that because you don't, if you have a, 2 terabyte database, you don't really want to move the whole thing into Azure, right? Number one, it's going to increase your downtime. Number two, you might not need all this, there might be some logging data that you have left over that your business doesn't really need. Things like that. It's always good to clean up. And I'll talk a little bit more on the process of moving. Oh, actually, it is my next slide. The process of how we move your database from on-prem to Azure, right? Essentially, because if you're going to the cloud option, you will be running from Azure SQL. At this point, the known working approach is to do an export from your 2012 production DB, export of a backpack file, right? It's not a BAK file, it's actually a backpack file. It's a special export from your production DB. And then you'll take that backpack file and then load it into Azure SQL Production DB, right? And this entire process happens during downtime. That's why it's essential to do the upgrade analysis service bit to clean it up, right? Because I actually worked with a customer we work with very closely. When we start, before actually we start, we ask, so how big is your database? It's like, they come back as 900 gig. I was like, wow. That's a pretty big, it's not small, but it's not, it's not, yeah, it's a good sized database, right? The approach we took there is, let's see how much we can clean up, right? Before we deploy a developer environment for you with a huge ton of disks attached, let's see how big we can reduce it, how much we can help you to reduce. It turns out we actually reduced it to less than 50% of the total size because they had a whole bunch of logs there and they've never cleaned up dump purging. So there's absolutely a lot of value in doing that if you want to minimize your downtime. We're also looking at because we still have a couple of months away from releasing this, right? So we're looking at other approaches where we can kind of minimize downtime, but we're not ready to talk about those approaches. This is the only known approach to do data upgrade today. So in terms of exactly what happens, right? We've been talking about this data upgrade process, exactly what happens. And is it exactly the same way that we do back in 2012 versus what we do today? It is very similar. There's few differences, but at a very high level, you would do, on the left-hand side is your 2012 system. On your right-hand side is your ops system. This flow represents a flow a developer would do, right? The first thing is you have a group that's doing code upgrade. They've just finished their first iteration. And this data migration, data upgrade guy comes in and say, hey, I can give me the code that you just upgraded that can compile, right? That's step number 1 there. I'm going to then deploy that code into a developer VM, right? Which is a 7 VM, operation VM. Then I'm going to take my 2012 DB, back it up. In this case, you can use just a regular backup because the developer himself or herself is working on a Azure VM or a downloaded VM, right? It's pretty much Dynamics 365 for operations in a box kind of deal. So it's still got a physical SQL server on there. So you take a backup from 2012 after you prepped it, went through all the pre-upgrade checklist tasks, and then you restore it on the same ops VM. And then you rename the Microsoft Dynamics X DB to whatever DB was referred to by your web config, right? I think the default is XDB. That's step number 3 there. And then you run, if you have run a intra D365 for ops data upgrade, that's the same runbook execution process you run, right? And then you would run it iteratively. If you've done a 2012 data upgrade before, intra 2012 that is, you know this is an iterative process, right? You run into an error in pre-sync, you say what script is not working, you fix those scripts, you run it again. DB sync, there's duplicate records, you cannot create a unique index, your table was renamed, some table missing, a field was renamed, right? You fix those, and then you run post-sync, you fix those, at the end, hopefully you'll come on top and have a working end-to-end process. So the magic actually happens on step number 4, right? So exactly what's in step number 4, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's basically 6 circles there. The first 2 circles is something very specific to operations, which is init, schema, and prereqs. Essentially, it's something that we do to massaging all the system tables that we need for the sync engine and the kernel to be up and running. Prereq, remember I was talking about the full ID sync, right? We grab your 2012 element ID, object ID, and stuff and make sure they are synced to your X7 metadata. So we do that during the first 2 steps. And if you are very, very familiar with how things worked in 2012 in terms of data upgrade, you'll say, wait a minute. In 2012, there's pre-sync, DB sync, and post-sync. How come you have an extra DB sync in there? So for ops, we're doing 4 steps now, right? We're doing pre-sync, the first DB sync, a post-sync, and a final DB sync. I'll get into the reason why we do sync twice on a later slide. And I actually caught myself saying something that's not quite, that could confuse you a little bit on the previous slide, so I'm going to correct myself. When I said when your code upgrade team is done with code upgrade, then your data upgrade guy can come in and do your data upgrade, right? That's might not necessarily be the truth. Because you don't have to have a perfectly upgraded code base to do data upgrade, right? Ultimately, your business user wants you to start data upgrade as soon as possible, right? So the minimum bar you need to hit in terms of compiling code is you want all your table to be compiling. That's it. Because in terms of data upgrade, we just need your D365 for ops schema there. Right? We don't need any of your business logic because we're just doing data upgrade, right? To get things to start. Obviously, as your code upgrade team finish their task, we'll bring their code in there. And if you have some business logic doing some stuff to your data, obviously that has an impact on data upgrade in a later stage. But in order to get data upgrade to start, all you need to upgrade is your table stuff, right? So you could, yes, questions?
Can you talk a little bit about how object IDs and table IDs and field IDs for custom tables play into this whole story? Because obviously when you're doing your code upgrade, you need to ensure that those object IDs haven't changed, or do you not have to worry about that? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. The question is, during code upgrade, is there anything I have to worry about in terms of keeping my object ID and blah, 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 and all that? So your object ID and all that stays in ModelDB, right? If you're not, say, for example, if you're not adding any new things during your code upgrade, right? You just upgrade code as is, right? So if you have, say, 7,200 tables, thousands of classes, and all that in 2012, and if you're just doing lift and shift and put them into X7, what the sync engine does is it's going to look into, because we copy the model element DB, that table into our business DB, the sync engine is going to look through all the existing model elements and to say, hey, does it exist in this model element table? If it does, take this element ID, assign it to the existing guy. So say if there's cost table, we'll see if there's a cost table exists, and under a cost table there's 50 fields. We'll see what those element IDs are, and then we'll reassign them one by one to the new X7 side metadata. So there's nothing you need to worry about during code upgrade.
So right now, is that a 100% error-proof process?
We have not run into error, yes. I'm proudly to say we ran into a couple of bugs during sync engine, but I proudly say that those bugs are being ironed out, and right now this process actually works pretty smoothly.
The biggest concern at any point of time is loss of data because the object IDs go out of sync. When you do the DB sync, let's say your field one, custom field one had one ID in your H2012 database, whereas now it has a different ID in Dynamics 365 for Ops. When you do a DB sync, you're wrong.
That's exactly the thing we're fixing. If you're just doing a DB sync, a regular DB sync, you run into a conflict. When we do a full ID sync, we actually look into, the data in the model element table, and then we're reassigning the ID. So we're completely overwriting all the element IDs that's being created on the 7 side.
You're overwriting those on the data side, or you're
On the metadata side. On the X7 metadata side. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yep, the full ID sync is done during data upgrade.
You're saying on the table should be compiled, before you can start the migration. Makes sense to me. But there's one step which is required, moving into extension.
Yeah.
So do you expect us to move into extension before or after?
Very good question. So when I ask you, let me come back with another question. The question is, what happens if I'm moving stuff into my table extension? What happens then, right? In terms of validation and user experience, whether you have your code or data in extension or overlayered, to the user, there's no difference, absolutely no difference, right? I would say the same thing in terms of data upgrade. If I look at the data schema at the database level, even if you moved your fields into the extension, on the database schema level, it's still the same schema. So when I'm doing transformation, it's still there. One note I want to add is when you do a code upgrade, most likely when you run the code upgrade, I'm just checking time here. When you run the code upgrade, the first time it's going to get checked into the main folder, right? Main trunk, main metadata, and that's where your whole group of people, maybe 2-3 engineers working on a code upgrade, right? I recommend you, for the data upgrade guys, actually just branch off of that branch. Create a new branch just for the data upgrade guys, where he can just say, if things don't compile, I'm just going to delete it. I'm just going to keep my table stuff, and then I'm going to proceed forward with my data upgrade. Okay. Anyways, I've spent way too much time here. Yep, data upgrades run exactly the same way. When I say data upgrade scripts, are those X++ classes that derive from release update DB, right? It's exactly the same way you write it back in 2012. It's exactly the same way it's run. It's run in batch. The framework itself will be smart enough to figure out the dependencies. So it'll get run in the right order. So before you guys start writing the script, these are very good four questions that I would ask you. The first is, when exactly do I need to write upgrade scripts, right? I would say writing, the actual action of writing a data upgrade scripts proactively actually happens as part of code upgrade. Because during code upgrade is when you know, am I making a schema change when I do code upgrade, right? Am I denormalizing a table? Am I normalizing two tables? Am I rename a field? Am I renaming a table? Am I tricking a unique index? Am I adding a unique index? If you made those schema changes during your code upgrade, then you need to write the data upgrade scripts that patches the data, right? Number two is, okay, if I determined, if I know for this type of schema differences, I'm writing a data upgrade scripts, then you need to ask yourself, what different types of data upgrade scripts do I need to write? I'll get into what are the different types of data upgrade scripts on a later slide. And then the third one is, how best should I implement these scripts, right? There's certain best practice patterns and guidelines that I'm going to give. And then best practice, question number 4. So answer to the first question is, when do you need to write a data upgrade script, right? So let's just quickly scan through this list. First one is, if you change the name of a field, right? If you rename a field from, say, on cost table, you have a custom field A, you rename it to custom table B, you have to write a data upgrade script for it. If you rename the table, same thing. If you deleted a table or deleted a field, you have to write the data upgrade script. But I think the thing that you would run into the most is adding or changing a unique index, right? When you do a DB sync, if we added a new unique index and we forgot to provide an upgrade scripts for, you will run into an error during DB sync if you have replicated records on that table, because it's a new unique index, right? Or it's a modified one. So you need to write a data upgrade script for that. If you restructure where data is stored, right? If you normalize stuff, if you denormalize stuff, you have to make sure you copy data in the right place. Populate new tables with existing data, pretty much the same. Correct old data inconsistencies. This is something you can run as part of the data upgrade, or you can run your cleanup on your source system. Populate new fields with existing data. So if you're adding a new field that does not have a default value, you have to make sure basically run the business logic to initialize those new fields.
I have a question regarding base enum. So if I customize base enum, standard base enum, and some new elements and information in front of them, is there any impact by the way data upgrade going into
When you customize it, if we did not add a number that overrides yours, then you're good. But if we added an extra element that overrides yours, then you need to I would consider that a code upgrade as well as a data upgrade. If the base enum is extensible or it's not extensible, you have to deal with it 2 different ways. Let me cover the rest of the patterns, and we can dive into that separately. When data upgrade is not needed is if you're adding a field that has a default value. So obviously, you don't need to worry about that. If you add or change relationships, you don't need to worry about that. Add or change non-unique indexes, that's not going to affect anything. Delete actions, not going to affect anything. Temporary tables, you don't need to write a data upgrade script for. So this is mainly for the code upgrade guys to say, hey, I'm doing a code upgrade. If I'm doing a data schema change, should I write a data upgrade script, right? This 2 slides is dedicated to those guys. And then we come to the second question, which is what type of data upgrade scripts, right? And if you worked with upgrade scripts before, you know there's 2 types of upgrade scripts. There's the major version one, and there's the minor version one. So if you've done a D365 for operations intra-data upgrade, say if you upgraded from RTW to app4, all the upgrade scripts that you would run, if you look at closely at them, they'll be tagged with pre-sync update and post-sync update. Those are considered minor upgrade scripts. If we were to run today, 2012 up to D365 upgrade, those scripts will not get run, right? Because they're considered minor scripts. And all the existing scripts that our team is working on, we're tagging them with pre-sync and post-sync, which means they are major upgrade scripts. So if you are to write a script for 2012 to D365, you have to tag them with the major upgrade attributes. Again, script type, there's mainly three different types of scripts: standard, partition, and shared. Again, if you're familiar with how upgrade worked, they mean exactly the same thing in D365. Standard script means these attributes determines how often these scripts get scheduled during the actual upgrade process, right? If you tag it with standard script, this script will get scheduled once per legal entity, right? You have to be extra careful when you use that one, because if you have some of our huge customers have tens of thousands and 15,000 legal entities, and if you tag some script as a standard script, it's going to get scheduled 15,000 times. And even if one script runs 5 seconds, that adds up. So in terms of reducing downtime, you have to be really careful. A partition script gets run once per partition. A shared script gets run only once. Right? I have asterisks in there because in D365 for ops, we only support one partition. Right? So I'm going to go through 2-3 patterns here. The first pattern I'm going to go through is what happens if a table or a field gets renamed or removed. Remember we had this del underscore thing in 2012? Yeah, that's not there anymore. But we have another way for you to do pretty much exactly the same thing. What we do is, say if you have cust table, have a custom field A, right? You rename it to field 2, custom field B. What you do is you add custom field A, the older, the legacy field name, into X7, right? That's the first bit. Add renamed, removed table or field in operations data. Right? You add the deprecated field on the new metadata side, and you tag it with sys object delete. If you're going live on 7.2, you tag it with 7.2. If you're going live with 7.3, you tag it with 7.3. The idea is during upgrade, you don't have that configuration key turned on. So when we do the first DB sync, whatever data that you have in your old field doesn't get blown away by DB sync, right? It'll be still there, and during post sync, you'll just copy your data from your old field to your new field, and you call it done. And when you enable sys delete key, it'll just get deleted. A good example there. How am I doing on time? Eating into some of the Q&A time, but that should be okay. I just want to show you a real-life example how we did it in our code base. So, for example, this case is I think we've renamed a field. It used to be called reverse charge, and we renamed it to reverse charge amount, right? So what we did in the cust invoice jur table is, if I search for reverse here, sorry, thank you. Okay, so in a cust invoice jur table, this was the old name. This was the new name, right? So if I go to the property for this old name, you'll see I've tagged it with sysdelete object. The idea is when we do the DB sync, this guy will still be there. And during post sync, I'll copy the data over. Then when this key gets enabled, this field is gone. And you'll see exactly that's what we do here in code. Over here, this is a post sync script. We're doing update record set whenever possible. And then all we're doing is just copy the value from the old field into the new field. That's it. Pretty straightforward there. And the next, scenario is adding or modifying a unique index. The error you will see from this is create unique index failed because you have duplicated record in blah, blah, blah table during DB sync, right? So the approach to take here, and this also explains why we have two DB syncs. Because in the first DB sync, what we do is do sync the table, but actually skip synchronizing these new indexes to these tables. But how does the sync engine know which indexes to skip, right? That's where the pre-sync comes in. So during pre-sync, you say, I know I'm going to have an issue on this table because there was a new unique index. I'm going to have to massage this and dedupe this table during pre-sync, during post-sync. But I know DB sync is going to fail, therefore in pre-sync, I say, all these indexes, please, sync engine, don't sync them to the table, right? That's what I do in pre-sync, and in the first DB sync engine will skip those indexes that was ignored. In post-sync, you can do your deduping logic, and in the last DB sync, it does the regular sync, which the new unique index or a changed unique index will get synced down to the table. Again, I'm going to show you guys a example where we do that. Over here, we've changed index on this table over here. During the pre-sync, we're calling disable unique index, right? We're saying, I know if I don't disable this, DB sync is going to error out. Therefore, I'm disabling this during pre-sync. And then during post-sync, I'm doing a dedupe, right, on this table. Once I deduped, boom, the last DB sync happens, everything will be happy. But this is indeed a very tricky scenario because it's not about just upgrading the table itself, right? Because there might be records on a different table that's having a reference to whatever you're updating, right? And there could be a cascade delete scenario where, say, your parent table has 2 records. Because we added a new unique index, these 2 records became duplicates, right? But both records actually points to the same set of child records. If you went ahead and deleted one of these parent record as part of your deduping logic, if cascade delete happens, all these child record will go away. So even if you're leaving this one parent record thinking that, yep, I'm deduped, I'm good, guess what? All its child got accidentally deleted. So these are the scenarios you have to be extra careful. The example I'm going to show you is actually on. By the way, if you go to your own code base and try to look for these, it's not going to be there because it's in our latest code base. Just so you know. Over here, we have basically 2 scripts. The first script actually updates the ledger journal trends. It's basically resequenced the line num. But the thing is, we actually have another table which refers to the old line num, right? So we actually go into the referencing table to make sure the line num on the referencing table gets updated also. Right, so that goes through the referential integrity stuff that we just talked about. So that's the pattern we want to cover. And if you've written data upgrade scripts before, you've probably tried a direct SQL approach, right? It's definitely not recommended for good reasons because there's no compiler support, right? It's very error prone when you run them. It performs good relatively compared to X++ scripts sometimes. But in general, we don't recommend it. In cases where you absolutely need to do it because there's no other way, some enum cases which requires it, we say the pattern you should follow is, maybe you can't see the code over here, but what this says is instead of hard coding your table name and field name inside of your direct SQL statements, make sure you use things like table num and field num to actually get compiler support. At least you are validating the table name and field name itself. Key things to consider. To me, the biggest concern is minimize downtime, minimize downtime, minimize downtime. Because we're already taking a lot. Moving your databases, run data upgrade, there's functional validations you need to do. There's post-upgrade task list you need to do. So the quicker it takes us to run your data upgrade during the downtime, the better. The key to minimize data upgrade downtime is if you're writing a new data upgrade scripts, please try your best to use set-based operations. Try your best to do partition script, which runs once across the entire partition. Right? Try not to use standard script. And the way you would use it is to write a cross-company query. When you do updates, make sure you do it with cross-company. I have a little asterisk there, is because when you do a set-based operation today, and if you tag it with cross-company, unfortunately, it does not work. And this is a kernel bug. Hopefully, it'll get resolved in update 5. So when we do make this available in app 7.2, you will be able to do this. This is done. This talks about how many times you do this migration exercise, right? The first iteration is a developer takes it and run it on his or her own box. Once he's able to run the process end to end, say, yep, I'm ready. Let's deploy a sandbox. Let's do a mock cutover. This sandbox will come with an Azure SQL. That's where you would exercise, let's try export, let's back up our production DB, try export a backpack file. Let's see how long does that take. Right? Let's try import that backpack file into Azure SQL, and let's see how long that takes. And let's try run the data upgrade scripts end to end, and let's see how long that takes. And then identify where your bottleneck is, and then try to optimize. That's essentially what you want to do. And then obviously the last time you would run it, it's going to be in your production cutover, and hopefully it'll be, fingers crossed, it'll be an error-free end-to-end process. But if there's errors that does happen in the final production cutover, I would recommend you to do this also at the same time on a developer box, right? If something happens, you can do the fix there quickly. Just don't assume if it works. We've tested before a ton of times. It's going to work in production. Again, supported versions R3. In terms of validation, it's pretty much the same slide. I kept it there just to keep the same theme consistent. I believe Tariq already talked through all this validation pieces. Sorry, 3 minutes for questions. Yes?
What's the typical upgrade or downtime you've seen in terms of database sites and what have you?
Yeah.
Just a ballpark.
Sure. The question is, what's the typical downtime have we seen in association to database size? I can tell you today, the time it takes to run the upgrade itself on the demo data, which is around 2 gig, is about, depends on, obviously the machine we run it is not a very good machine. It's a 1 box, right? It's about 45 minutes to an hour.
So the 500 gigs that you talked about, we're looking at?
I don't think you can extrapolate linearly because it really depends on how many legal entities you have and what type of data script, update scripts, right? If you have a ton of legal entities, then you have a ton of standard script, we're scheduling this on a per legal entity basis. Even though one single script running it once might not take that long, but if you multiply it by the number of legal entities, that adds up. So the answer is it really depends, but you can't just extrapolate like that.
What's the worst case that you've seen?
To be honest, we have not experimented with a whole lot of customer database yet. So if we are running we're doing a survey that you can get a link from Shelly Baki. If you're interested in trying this and test it and get yourself, not officially starting the TAP program for this yet. Yeah. Do we have any path for R2? Before R2. Right now, we're only supporting R3. We've done initial analysis on R2. It should not be a lot of effort to get it to work. The only reason why we're not supporting it is because the tests and validation piece is huge. So R2, we should be good. For R1, if you're coming not on the RTM version, so if you have model store, that should also be okay. If you're coming from RTM, like Carol said, there's a tool that helps you to extract. That's for code upgrade. Actually, for data upgrade, if you're coming from RTM, it's actually nice because your model element table, guess what? It's already in there. So you don't need to move it. It's just a matter of us testing it and make sure the script actually it works. Yeah. The goal, I guess, is avoid you guys avoid having you guys do a multiple hop. It's just one hop. Wherever you guys are coming from, one hop to D365. That's our goal. Yes, questions? How many? Are very good question. Are update scripts needed for custom tables? The answer is it depends. Remember we talked about the very first question is when do I need to write an update script, right? And we went through 2 slides on the schema. If you made a schema change, these are the schema changes that would require a data upgrade script, and these are the schema changes that does not. So I would go back to those 2 slides, and that's essentially the guideline right there. All right, cool. You guys are welcome to ask questions afterwards. Thank you.